Well, good morning, and thank you for being here this morning. We have fabulous panelists here, a wide array of industry representation, and we're going to spend a little time today talking about the current state of the industry. What are some current trends? Where do we see the industry headed in the near future, short term? And I'll let the panelists introduce themselves, and you'll recognize that there's quite a mix and array here, and interesting perspectives. My pocket's vibrating, so I'm wondering what. Okay, Paul, I'll start with you.
Good morning, everybody. Paul Tremidis. I'm with FMI. We're a management consulting and investment banking firm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. I lead our building products team and very involved with MCA, and we recently finished the 2024 metal roof and wall study. So happy to share some of the insights from that, and I'll pass it over to Brian.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Partica. I am the Vice President of Business Development for Carlisle. We're a large publicly traded building products manufacturer based out of Carlisle, Pennsylvania and Scottsdale. So before that, I ran Carlisle Architectural Metals, which consisted of Peterson and Drexel. So, and I also am the chair of the MCA. So thanks for being here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bob Zapsik. Company is called Z-Tech Consulting, but I'm actually, my primary client is the Metal Construction Association. Worked with Andy Williams running our technical programs. We do a lot of codes and standards development, monitoring industry trends. My background's primarily technical. I'm an engineer by practice, and been associated with this organization for well over a decade now, either as a board member or just a member, now a consultant to it. So I'm very blessed with some good company here on the stage, and I hope you enjoy our presentation today. Back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Bob. I'm Tom Seitz. I'm with Insights and Strategies, which is a small little operation of consulting, but my main job is as the MCM Alliance Executive Director. So I'm working for the MCA and working with metal composite materials. So looking forward to hearing lots of questions answered, and we'll go from there.
And I'm Sean McHugh with AZZ Precoat Metals. We're the largest coil coating company in the world, and I oversee marketing, strategy, and support the investor relations side from a Precoat standpoint.
My name's Chandler Varden. I'm the president of Sedan Machinery, and we manufacture sheet metal processing machines from coil lines to folders to roll formers.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll start with just how do we view the current state of the industry? What are the top level performance? What are the trends you're seeing? How is the product mix changing, if at all? And Paul, you're the economist. We'll give you the first stab at that.
Well, thank you, Jeff. So we look at for FMI, we just released our Q4 2024 outlook. And if we look at the overall state of the industry, what we saw is substantial growth from 21 to 23, and then a slight decline in growth, just a couple basis points there from 23 to 24. And what we see is more of a softening or slowing of growth into 25 and 26. And a return to growth in 27, 28. Now, it's really important to break that down by the big sector. So think about residential. We're very optimistic on the single family over the forecast period, seeing more growth in that 26, 27, where we're seeing some contraction or decline in growth is really that multifamily, largely driven by the overbuilding from the 21 to 23 period, and then in non-residential. Now that's a really interesting market because you think about industrial. What we saw from 21 to 22 was 50% increase in spending in industrial manufacturers. All the high-tech, semiconductor, EV, battery, and then from 22 to 23, another 50%. So we're at unprecedented levels right now in spending in the industrial space. And a slowing of growth, not because of the overall market is going to be at a new volume, but as far as growth rates, it'll be about a 2 to 3% annually over the next 4 years. So that's going to have a significant impact on the overall non-residential space. But we do see, as we all know, data centers, healthcare, education being very favorable over the next several years. As far as the big trends, I think we'll know more about that after November. It'll depend. We did a recent analysis actually for the past 5 elections. And historically, each quarter, Q3 and Q4 prior to an election were soft. And into Q2 of the following year, we saw very favorable growth. Every year after an election, we saw very, very strong growth. So given historical trends, we would anticipate something to that extent as well. Brian, anything?
Yeah.
I think you covered it for the most part. I think architectural index or the architects index is still below 50. So that's an indicator on new construction. So that's something that we track. And the West seems to be trailing much greater than the South in the index. The new opportunities that are happening at AIA and what they report is actually up. So it's over 50. So that's telling us that there's a lot of projects in design that will eventually happen. So I think people are still sitting on their wallets based on what's happening in the next week, right? I know more about anybody else, but I'm tired of seeing all these ads on the television, and I get more text messages about it too. But yeah, I think it's we're anticipating a softening a little bit in Q1, just because, to your point, Paul, about what happens in an election year. So, but as far as trends, we're seeing a lot of full system approaches, and that's something that we're very focused on, is making sure that we're seeing that whole assembly discussion rather than just a product now. And architects are really, really focusing on the total, whether it's air and vapor barriers or whether it's the insulation below the metal roofs or even the single skin walls. And obviously IMPs have a double digit potential for growth. So a lot of opportunity. It's an exciting time. I think contractor backlogs are pretty strong still. So we're going to continue to see growth. I think residentially, it's been a tough year. And I think residential roofing is going to be a struggle here for the next, until interest rates really start to normalize a bit.
Brian, just a follow-up question, and then I'll defer. You talked about the AIA index, and that's usually an 8-9 month lead time projector on, where projects are. In talking to members, I've heard received mixed feedback on, the number of projects that are coming into them at this point in time. Current backlogs remain strong, but there seems to be some report of slowing of the number of new projects that are coming to them. And
yeah. I mean, obviously you have that dictates new construction, right, of the architects. So a lot of our business is re-roofing. So we spend a lot of time looking at re-roofing trends and what our opportunities are in the re-roofing side of things. So that's where I think most of the backlog is with our customers. We just acquired a company that does perimeter edge metal. That's obviously tied to commercial roofing. So that's something that we also focus on. So I think anything below 50 means that we're in a contraction, right? So we want to see those numbers at greater than 50 if at all possible. And I think, Jeff, from our side of it, it's rather important that we listen to the contractor and really focus on what that contractor's needs are. And the market's going to do what the market does. And so what we need to do is make sure we're in front of those customers and making sure that they're getting value out of the products and services that we offer.
Sean?
Yeah, there's a couple of other trends out there that I think are worth pointing out. And one of the things that's been very major the last couple of years, and it's now facing uncertainty going forward, is the amount of pre-painted metal that's coming in offshore. So I think you guys have read about trade cases. That seems like it's going to get a little bit more clear come November. But when you look at the industry from kind of how much total pre-painted metal has gone into construction over the last couple of years, it appears to be flat to down. But when you account for the amount of material that's coming offshore, it's actually up. It's up a little bit more than GDP. And that's despite facing very tough comps in the warehousing segment, where we think that's down 20% year over year. And I think that Chandler here has some more line of sight into some of those growth areas, like metal going not only onto the roof, but onto the wall with board and batten panels and things like that. that are now, you'll see them here at METALCON.
Yeah, and so that's a good segue to Chandler. A follow-up question about, what are you seeing on the equipment side in those trends? And
So on the equipment side, we're definitely seeing growth, but in some segmented areas. So one is the regional manufacturer that's doing on-site roll forming, and we're seeing a big uptick in those sales. Not just through our company, but I know all the machine manufacturers are growing there. And that can be for the roofing panels, but also the board and batten wall panels. And then on the folding side, or the implant side, we see a lot of growth, again, in the wall panels with the custom wall panels, or matching the board and batten roll former panels that are out there. I think we'll discuss in a little bit Sean mentioned the varieties, our paint coming, coatings coming from offshore and material coming from offshore. With the wall panels, we see a lot more diverse painting and coatings and different textures that are on metal that people are wanting to form on our equipment, which for us, that's very positive, because I see that as a growth for the industry. That's a newer product with these vibrant colors, or the wood grain painting and all that. So as far as the equipment side, we see an investment in those two sectors, as well as automation.
thank you. And I guess, Tom, I'll give you an opportunity to speak to MCM sector.
The state of the union here with MCM is very interesting, because we lag a lot in the rest of the market, because we're the last thing on the building. So that changes things for us a little bit, because in talking with some of the fabricators just recently, some are very, very busy. Some of it's slowing down. Some of it's weather related, in the fact that we've had some good weather in the last couple of weeks, that they're putting up things faster than they've ever done that in the fall. So a lot of things happen, on a local, regional basis. So I think it's still a mixed bag right now. And I think obviously and if it goes down a little bit or comes back as far as the 9-month period that was mentioned, I mean, we lag that. So our business will be extended into the 26, 27 area, depending on the size of the buildings. So the lag really helps us, but it also hurts us down the road. So I think that's all part of our industry.
Sustainability and decarbonization has been a major topic of conversation across the industry and in different sectors for some time. And so, Bob, I'll start with you. What actions has the industry taken, and what are we doing to ensure that metals positions are understood and protected?
I'm happy to address that. I'm going to go back to trends, if you don't mind, real quick, because I did want to bring, as the code and standards technical guy, like, what does he know about marketing? And I probably don't know very much, but I know this: you can't build anything without a permit. And I know getting a permit is not going to be much easier. If you want me to come up here and expecting me to come up here and says technologies make compliance easy, there'll be no problems, permits will be rolling out of the building official's office, I would be lying. We've seen a lot of increased scrutiny, particularly with storms. I don't have to cover that subject with you here, especially if you're from Florida. Wildfires and high-rise fires, and just been a really increased amount of scrutiny. So we're working very hard, and sustainability actually is part of that discussion too. We're working very hard to prep our customers and our members for this, because honestly, the way building code officials' offices are staffed right now, they're really depending on a lot of folks like the manufacturers to step up and have your testing organized, have everything together, have your third-party certs ready to go, because they're just really shifting that burden on to the permitting applicants. So, but anyway, going back to sustainability, that'll be something too, not so much at the permitting level, but at the standards level. You're starting to see those discussions a lot. And in fact, the EPA has come out and announced that they're going to have a construction materials labeling program. So just like you got a label on your box of cereal that tells you how many carbs are in it and calories and sugars, and it'll say what your embodied carbon is. And those materials will be graded on not necessarily against types of materials or selection guides. They'll really be looked at as different processes for the same materials. So what the idea is that we'll gather a lot of industry data all across different sectors and materials. We'll average that data out, and we'll create tiers based on which bin you fall into, or what your percentile of improvement over the average is. And that's actually how these labeling programs will be worked. And obviously, if you perform well on the label, you're a little bit more likely to be selected. And that will be all at the manufacturing facility level, specific to the product and the location where it's been fabricated. So this is a huge change. We don't have all the infrastructure, if you will, of the codes and standards in place to really say how that's going to get done. And EPA knew that, and that's a big reason why they put funding for development of those types of standards and programs in the Inflation Reduction Act. And that's been a lot of money. AISI's gotten some, concrete, wood, AISI being the steel industries. And so we'll be using those resources to further develop codes and standards. We're working on our EPD renewal process right now. I've got great attendance to that, but we're going to be renewing those in the very near future, and then starting to develop new PCRs under this new EPA process too. So we're very focused on what it's going to be like 5 years from now, not so much next year.
Hey, Bob, just talking about, we're all downstream converters for the mill. Excuse me. How much does the mill impact how we select products come into play with an environmental product declaration? So basically, we're not producing the steel, we're converting it into a part, and you guys are buying from us, right? So we got to make sure that it's very clear that a lot of what's going to be dictated is by our supplier network, right? Supply chain. So how does that impact us as an industry as a whole?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it's another area where we have actually budgeted a little bit more money when we do our EPD renewals, so that we'll have a tool, basically a software tool like a spreadsheet, where you can get that data from your coil supplier and have a embodied carbon for the steel slider, so to speak, and be able to produce your certification for that project right then and there. But it plays a tremendous role in it.
I'm going to ask.
And AISI and has still been working on their sustainability programs. And so they're actually working very hard to try to lay that background, because what they don't want is what the current situation is, which we all have to do our own EPDs for our own products. Well, when the steel is 95% of your carbon, what's the impetus of a manufacturer to lower carbon if they can only knock it down 2 or 3%? So they're working on that whole process. I mean, back to square one, really, and how they grade these things to try to account for that, to make sure they're incenting the right parties for improvement.
It seems to me that there's a handful of other things going on, and the associations are really going to be the ones that are going to drive this. And it's to be able to compete against other substrates, so against wood, against concrete, against glass, other things. And what our mission, I think, is not only MCA, but MBMA, NCCA, it's arming the customers to be able to talk to people making decisions on what materials to use on a life cycle analysis benefit of using metals in the construction rather than choosing something else. And we can all be up here and we think it's a good idea, but some of the other materials that we compete against certainly do a better job so far of pretending to be more sustainable than what we believe is the best material.
Yeah, and just to build on that from an just general industry perspective, sustainability has been kind of a topic of conversation for a number of years now. The big thing is, you could talk to 50 different people, and the way they define sustainability is going to be 50 different ways. And is it energy management? Is it energy efficiency? Is it carbon reduction? Is it recyclability? And I think on the carbon footprint side, we're seeing more and more owners look at ways to procuring products that are lower embodied carbon. One of the challenges, though, kind of to Bob's point, is across product category, whether it's HVAC, roofing, what have you, there's not an equitable way to compare products against each other, which is really a challenge in the industry. And the other piece is we've put so much emphasis on the embodied carbon piece, where the majority of the carbon comes from the operational side. And that's really not being highlighted in the industry. And I think from a recyclability and an embodied carbon standpoint, the metal roof and wall industry has a very strong position. And it's just how do we highlight that? And then as far as the operational carbon piece, also highlighting that and the benefits from metal roof and wall.
Yeah, and I think that the operational piece creates opportunity as well, right, for metal, as you talked to. The retrofits and the incentives that are out there today, just to improve overall operations. I know MCA is engaged in some research on some new systems to help heat capture and repurposing to help improve operational performance of these systems. But metal has a great message to tell. We have challenges with, we don't have a uniform message today. I think that's where we struggle. Wood is out there, and they're united as an industry. Concrete's united as an industry. Metal is dependent upon the mills for the most part, for that messaging. And it was touched on, doesn't always filter down to the end user and of the products. And as Sean alluded to, the associations and MCA is engaged and focused on developing some of that messaging to help better communicate our attributes and advantages.
Jeff, I think you touched on some really good points, but I know I'm preaching to the choir here by saying we have the best story to tell about sustainability because our products can be cradle to cradle, cradle to cradle, right? So, and the infrastructure in the U.S. would really lend itself nicely to having full circularity, right? So a roof gets taken off, it gets taken to a scrap yard, gets recycled, melted down, we can make another roof out of it. There's not another competing product that I can think of. The wood industry claims that they're sustainable, but they just plant more trees, right? So it's kind of a nice thing for them to say, but at the same time, they're chopping down trees, right? We can use a product, the technology that you see, if you spend some time at SDI or US Steel here today, learn about the electric arc furnace. That is an amazing process. That is such an important function and what we're looking forward to actually being able to tell our story much greater. And US Steel is engaged in a responsible steel campaign, which is started over in Europe. So there's a lot of good things happening. It's just how do we tell the story? And we have a ton of manufacturers at very fragmented segments in our markets that we're all telling the same story, but different ways, as Bob was saying. So 50 different ways. Yeah.
Sean, we talk about life cycle analysis, and coatings play a big role in the performance of our products. And what's happening in the coatings sector?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things happening. So first and foremost, the technologies that are out there today have incredibly long lives. So you've got most of the paint companies have a warranty of 35 years on PVDF. Silicon modified polyesters might have a 40-year film integrity warranty. That's much, much, much longer than you're going to see from an asphalt shingle in terms of a performance. And so it's already great. And there's developments right now that are being made to go to kind of 100% solids coatings that are cured using electricity rather than natural gas, or burning in natural gas to cure those. The warranties are going to take a while to catch up, but that's technology that's it's out there. But really, when you look at that compared to the amount of carbon that you're going to consume making steel, it's nothing. So I think that the paint companies and the coil coating process using just such small or very thin coatings that perform very, very well and can be formed in a variety of different shapes. It's a really incredible technology right now that's just going to keep getting better.
Thank you. Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. One of the trends that I didn't hear mentioned in our earlier conversation was industry consolidation and vertical integration. And Carlisle's got a pretty aggressive strategy. And that's, so, what's the lasting impact of those trends on the industry today?
So being part of it, it's exciting because obviously there's a lot of fragmentation in the market. There's a lot of last names still in our industry, and we're seeing opportunities that pop up. There's a lot of legacy businesses that have succession plans, and there's a lot of businesses that probably don't have succession plans, and so they're trying to figure that out. It's an exciting time, I think, for us. I sold my business to Carlisle back in 2017, and then we purchased another business, and then we just purchased another business, and now that's my focus. That's my day-to-day focus is looking for opportunities to grow, and comes with a lot of opportunity, but also comes with a lot of challenges with M&A. It's not as easy as just writing a check. It is integration, it's deal models, it's understanding what's happening in the business, the trends. When you have larger companies that are buying smaller companies, there's a lot of things that we do with the smaller companies that they're not used to. So there's a lot of change management. But I think from an overall industry perspective, I think there's going to be additional consolidation over the next, call it between now and 2030. I think there's going to be quite a bit of that. There's a lot of opportunities for the employees and a lot of opportunities for the existing ownership to maintain the business, but also take some equity off the table and allow us to further consolidate the industry. I think there's a lot of things that big companies like Carlisle that we bring to the table from an innovation standpoint, from an R&D standpoint. So there's a lot of opportunities that we believe that we can bring a lot of value to the companies that we acquire.
And Paul, we've talked in the past about private equity and growing interest in the industry. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so within FMI, we have a group that's focused on private equity and due diligence, and that is by far in the last 5 years our fastest growing group within our organization. And we think about general roofing. It's largely, as Brian mentioned, a very fragmented industry, and a roll-up strategy really plays well into that for the private equity investment. And a couple key areas is when firms are looking to acquire or invest, they're really looking for companies in favorable growth markets. They're looking for folks that have strong leadership, looking to see aggressive growth, but maybe not have the resources currently. And a big part of it also is how aligned is your organization with the PE from a cultural standpoint, and do you want to see aggressive growth? Because I mean that is what the PE firms are interested in. They want to see a strong return in the next several years. And what we've tracked just in the last 12 months has been at least 40 private equity deals invested in the roofing space. But the other thing, that has been interesting, Jeff, is over the last 6 months, the interest in not only firms outside of the U.S. looking at the metal roof and wall market, but also firms within the U.S. that are in adjacent areas, seeing this as an opportunity for growth. And I think the metal wall and roof space has really started to get to a point where people are noticing it as a very attractive space. And a lot of interest is really starting to pour in from both private equity, domestic adjacent manufacturers, as well as foreign manufacturers looking to get into the marketplace.
Thank you. Any? Can't hear me. My mic went dead, but no, thank you. Tom, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here a little bit. The phase 2 Grenfell report came out not long ago. What impact does that have on the MCM sector, and what do people need to know in the U.S., or what should they be aware of in the U.S. about that report and any impact on the industry?
Really put me on the spot here, haven't you? Yeah, right between the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the report came out in London, basically in September. And it was a 1,700-page report outlining what the problems were. And of course, I didn't read the whole report. I only read the executive summary, and the parts that were interesting for our industry, and because they really came after everybody. The government was involved. The manufacturers were involved. There wasn't anybody that was unscathed from their comments, and rightfully so. But and the funny part of that whole project is that happened in June 14th, 2017. Took them this long to get that report out, one. So it was a very difficult thing to really study. But the real problem started even before that. It started in New Year's Eve in 2012 with one of the first fires that really hit the fan was at the torch in Dubai. So I mean, this has been going on for quite a while, and it has impacted our business in the composite side. But every one of those fires had the wrong core. And that's one thing that we have in North America that's a little different than everybody else. We have codes and testing that are beyond belief as far as what can be done. And it's a strong indicator for our industry of what we've done here in North America, and the Canadian market and the U.S. market both have codes that are very well basically backed up. So I think that is really where the key is. You can point all the fingers at everybody else in this report and whatnot, but if we did not have our codes and our testing here in North America, we would be in the same boat. And I think that's working ahead with that kind of a thought process. Now, it has impacted our business. There's no question. There's a lot of people, a lot of architects that won't design with composite anymore. There's a lot of architects that still do because they believe. So I think that is one of the key requisites. And we spend at the MCM Alliance, we spend a lot of our time, probably 90% of our time, educating architects, owners, general contractors of what we are doing to make sure that we have a smart composite that's going on their buildings. So that's really where we are.
Thank you. Chandler, you talked about some of the trends in the equipment side of things. And what about automation, the technology and the innovation that's happened with some of the equipment? What's been driving that? And then also with the changes in prints, so two-part question. Anything that people need to be aware of as they're forming some of this equipment with the changes in the finishes and prints?
Yeah, I'll start with the automation side. So I don't know how many of y'all have come to METALCON for the past 4 or 5 years or so, but if you have, you've seen a big uptick in the machinery companies and the automation that they're showing. And that's largely driven by, let's say, the labor variables, not just the labor shortage, right? Variables meaning, of course, can you get people? Are they going to show up and are they going to be on time and everything? But also the level at which companies are trying to streamline their processes from the engineering side all the way through to the finished product side. It's putting a little bit more stress on operators. So of course that then goes to, okay, let's automate this cell here. And so first we saw the hardware kind of wave come through where manufacturers were developing different systems that could be made on new machines or even retrofitted on old machines to automate them more and more. And that's really developed from a basic level to a more advanced and more efficient level for automation over the last 3-4 years. Now what we're getting into is software integrations. So from your ERP to the machine, the HMI on the machine, and then back to your ERP to streamline that whole process. Sorry, I'll hold on a minute. Okay, maybe there's a, nope.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So they're trying to streamline the information from their ERP with different sales orders or manufacturing orders to the equipment and then back to the ERP to communicate everything. Now that's bringing in a lot of different integrations between different companies, which I think is good for the industry because we're advancing in the technology for manufacturing and making them more of a professional manufacturing facility. If you look at our niche of manufacturing, for my world, where we're making machines that go into more precision manufacturing with, they have lasers and press brakes, and even stamping machines. The manufacturing of wall panels and edge trim is really antiquated as far as automation. So that trend's going to continue because the technology's there from other industries, but it's also a demand just simply due to labor.
Okay. We talked about imports before, but I don't think we really touched on trade cases and the potential for, I know there was a number of proposed tariffs and increases in tariffs. What's, I'm not going to ask you what the likelihood of those things coming to be are, but what's the impact of additional tariffs, trade cases on the industry?
On the equipment side?
So you can start with that. I guess it was a general question to the whole panel, but that was done.
So most equipment is actually, most technology actually comes from Europe on the equipment side. We're owned by our factory in Sweden, and we have factories in Sweden, Switzerland, and Austria. So the tariffs, back and forth there haven't been a large topic for us. We hope we remain steady on that, let's say. And that's not shooken up too much. I mean, of course, like you said, next week's gonna, I think, a decision's gonna be made, and then we'll see what happens in the future. But I can't predict that.
So everyone knows about the Section 232 tariffs that happened in Trump's first term, and when those came down, the mills stateside made an awful lot of money and have used some of that money to invest in new capacity. And as they've done that, there was a period of time where the imports were needed because there wasn't enough domestic capacity to service the industry. So what you would have is companies putting in exception requests to not pay a tariff, and if no one objected to that exception, then someone would be able to bring something in with no tariff. Now, with the added capacity that people have used recent profits to invest in, much of it can be supplied stateside. So there is a case now that is a little bit more compelling, where you do have the mills and you do have other companies that are objecting. And I think that what ends up happening, as you said, I can't predict the future, but I can predict that it will happen in February because they said it would. I think that they're going to see a pretty substantial decrease from specific countries. And some of the other countries that aren't hit as hard might fill the gap. But I do think that a lot of that gap is going to be filled with new domestic supply.
Go ahead.
I can just touch on that a little bit. The integrated mills here in the U.S. have filed a trade case against Vietnam, right, for Galvalume. And basically that has turned the faucet off on import from Vietnam, which was significant, right? There was, I think it was 100,000 tons or 300,000 tons a month coming in from Vietnam or something ridiculous on Galvalume. And so now that that's obviously turned off, nobody's buying it because ultimately the tariff was going to be retroactive to those who brought product in. So nobody wants to buy something from offshore and then all of a sudden get a tax against it. So that's impacting obviously right now there's a lot of capacity in the U.S. As Sean said, but I think that overall that this is going to be a more common theme with the U.S. mills trying to protect the share, and I'm in favor of it. Honestly, I think there's obviously an opportunity for Nippon with U.S. Steel, and I support that. I think that's something that's going to be good for U.S. Steel in the long run. But I also think that the mills have the right to protect that capacity. And we at Carlisle, we like to buy everything domestically. We think it's really, really important to support all the locals that we can possibly do. So we're in big favor of that.
When these exceptions were being placed, when the mills were capacity constrained, the people that would put in the exceptions would literally have an email from the mill saying, yeah, we can't deliver that. And it's like, that's a pretty strong case then for them to be able to bring something in offshore. Now the mills that have capacity, they're able to do it. So when they object at this point and say, yeah, we can do that, they really can, and they can do it with short lead times.
Thank you. Bob, I know that the next version of LEED is in development or has been developed. What can people expect in version 5?
Yeah, so it is. It's actually been released for the existing buildings, and core and shell and new construction are under public comment right now. I submitted a public comment on behalf of MCA regarding tiers and actually exactly what I was talking about earlier. What percentile from the average you are in terms of carbon reduction, and so got the letter from USGBC and hey, thank you for your comment. And then here's the new version. You open it up and they changed everything in the whole entire credit. But the short story is that they're working very hard on that right now. Their goal is to release it actually in Greenbelt at the end of the month, in the next month. I don't think they'll make it. They're just hitting second public comment now. Matter of fact, I'm pretty confident they won't. But it'll be up and running, pretty early in the year next year. And what we're seeing is kind of a shift, slight shift away from focus on toxicity and third-party verification on material ingredients and more to, as you might expect, decarbonization. Toxicity things are still there, but they're starting to also respond to criticism that their third-party requirements had no transparency. And as you as a manufacturer, you had no idea. It was like, kind of like when you're a kid, you take a test and you send in, and they run it through the Scantron and you come back with a bad grade and you have no say-so in the process. And that's kind of the way those programs work. So they responded a little bit to that. There's been some standards being developed. So I actually, in my review of LEED 5, I think it's a pretty substantial improvement, just easier to work with. I think their shift on carbonization is understandable, and the way they're approaching it, very much like what I described earlier, is the right way to do it. So I'm anticipating when it is ready, like I said, let's say early next year, we'll start to see design firms pick it up, start working with it. Of course, the lead times to us as manufacturers is pretty long before we'll actually start manufacturing those products. But I think you'll start seeing it hit our doors as manufacturers towards the end of the year next year. And we'll have our EPD, the industry average EPDs aren't automatic credit like they used to be, but they are still used for the benchmarking. And again, we're going to make the investment on this digital tool to allow our members to actually produce a product-specific EPD for their project and show it relative to the average. So they will be able to comply with those things. It's just the nuts and bolts of the EPA program. It's still up in the air. We still got to work through some of those things, but the plan is there, and I feel very good about where we're going with this to help our members come into compliance. And I'll bolt on a comment too regarding foreign steel. This, I think 60%, 80%, depending on where you read, of carbon produced in steel production comes out of China. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody here. But the concern about that is if you look at the age of those mills in China, they're 30 years old or less, and probably just now hitting their prime. They obviously, if they've been maintained, they're expecting another 10, 15, 20 years out of it. They're not in the mood to upgrade those plants to low carbon processes, is the short story to that. And I think most foreign countries are in that same bucket. So as the shift towards lower carbon steel comes, it's going to naturally favor domestic steel. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And even today, with AISI's work and what they've done with the steel data, I mean, they're pretty much 25%, 30% less carbon per ton than the world average. So there's no place to go but down, and that's a good thing. I think that will work out in our favor and the industry's favor. So aluminum is kind of we've been starting to work a little bit with Aluminum Association. Marshall Wong gave a presentation with me for MCA a couple months ago, and aluminum is very much in the same position. They are working very hard to lower their carbon impacts. I can't get into the technical aspects of it. That's not my true area of expertise, but Marshall and I've talked about it quite a bit offline, and yeah, they're expecting much the same kind of improvements. Very similar stories. Most of the carbon produced in aluminum production comes from foreign countries, and those foreign countries those are relatively new facilities for them, so they're not in the mood to upgrade them. So pretty much parallel story with aluminum. We're going to get much better carbon numbers out of domestic aluminum, and they're working very hard to be have zero carbon aluminum by 2050, just like the steel industry is. They're same exact goals, very parallel stories.
So, Jeff previously asked me a two-part question. I didn't get to the second point, but since you're talking about bringing in foreign material, I want to touch on that because we get a question, or we get many questions as a machine tool manufacturer. Hey, is this new material that has the textured paint or the newer aluminum that's painted on both sides and very vibrant, how does that hold up in the forming process? We've had success with everything that we've run through our machines, and I'm sure other manufacturers have too. But when you look at it, and I support the bringing in the foreign material to a certain degree, as long as it's quality. MCA, we work hard to make sure we maintain standards in the industry. So the metal going on these buildings is well embraced in the future. It's part of the sustainability part of it. So to talk on that a little bit, we will of course get copies from and lower end quality eventually pushed into the market. We need to make sure that we're leading that standard that we set in those with that material before it gets here and it causes a bad rap. Because this past year, it just took off where we get more and more questions on this type of material. So I just wanted to put that out there on that topic.
Thank you. So looking forward, as we're nearing the end of our hour, we talked a little bit about 2025 and what we may expect, but what are the headwinds that the industry may face near term, the election aside, and what are your outlooks for 2025 and the 18 months that follow?
Yeah, so I think the big challenge is just overall affordability, particularly when you think about the residential space. But if I look at the metal, metal roof and wall market, our most recent study showed really favorable outlook for both roof and wall. So if I start with the roof space, on the residential side, very strong market in the replacement. And quick story, about a year and a half ago, one of our neighbors unfortunately had a house fire and they had to rebuild the home, and they got a metal roof. And everybody in the neighborhood was talking about it, and they're like, oh man, we can do that? And in the last 4 months, there are 2 other homes that now have metal roofs. And we think about the replacement market, it's largely driven by a lot of non-industry or outside the industry factors. We jokingly call it the Chip and Joanna Gaines factor. You have the Matt Risingers. You have all these influences that are showcasing the benefit and influencing a lot of adoption and greater growth. And then on the commercial side or non-residential side, we've seen a lot of uptick on standing seam, seen a lot of uptick in the institutional space, industrial certainly. And then on the metal wall moving forward, with just the pure growth in industrial, IMP has seen this tremendous growth in the last few years. And that is an area we see continuing to experience substantial growth. So overall, the market's certainly poised for growth, and just MCA, the education they've done in the market, the familiarity more so on the architectural side and pushing that, as well as having contractors pull it through, is really that key market strategy about the push and the pull. And I think that just provides that foundation for the next 2-3 years for continued growth across the industry.
I would say I copy Paul because he does such good work with FMI. But we did the same panel last year, and I think that the difference last year to this year, at least for me and from my perspective, is it was really easy last year to predict this year. This year, I feel like predicting next year comes with maybe more upside, but also probably more risk. So just the spread is greater than it would have been as I sat here a year ago.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on what Paul was talking about as far as residential. I think, metal roofing is the second largest residential roofing product installed in the United States, right? So we have 14, depending on which report you read, 14 to 16% market share. And I think the insurance companies are dictating a lot more about what's going to happen in the future when it comes to code compliance, wind uplifts, fire, hail, all of the things that we can promote much better than our asphalt shingle cohorts. But I think we've also made it easier for the contractor to get metal roofs to the job site using regional roll forming. I think that trend is here to stay. We're seeing a lot of opportunity with regional fabrication in local markets, that these smaller regional players that can get product to the market a lot quicker than a larger manufacturer. So we support that type of initiative. So I think getting the product to market has been a key factor. And I also think that metal roofing is becoming more widely accepted, and it may be a porch roof, right? It may be a couple dormers that have a standing seam roof on it. And then I think that there's some opportunity on the siding world, the siding side of the business. You'll see here are some extruded aluminum with some prints. That seems to be a growing trend. We're seeing metal on the interior as well, which is something that I think has a lot of upside for us. So Chandler, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. Like I said earlier, the on-site roll forming is definitely a growth area that we see. But to your point, geographically specific areas, it's just it's crazy how many have gone in over the last few years, and a lot of it is on the coastal regions and whatnot. So yeah, I see that as growth. And then one thing that hasn't come up yet is, and I know it's a little different product than standing seam, but I believe it was GAF came out with a metal roof product, which, if a big dog like GAF's, paying attention and saying, hey, we need to answer this call, that's a good sign for our metal roof industry. I think that'll continue to grow in the residential market.
Yeah, Chandler, I would echo that. And if you were at the Roofing Contractors Association conference last year, metal had an entire section, and that was a big release to just Chandler's point, GAF and their metal roofing shingle. And we're seeing more and more of interest in the metal roof shingle. And that, just to echo that point, when you have a company like that focused on and piloting that, you start to see more and more kind of the me too, well, we need to get into this industry as well. And that has just continued to build momentum and experience growth outside of standing seam.
So Jeff, you mentioned 18 months, so that's pretty much exactly the time frame I'm seeing this whole EPD and EPA labeling program coming together. So I won't recover that, but that's a big one. The other part to this is that we're in the middle of an ICC code development cycle right now, and Brian actually stole my thunder a little bit. The insurance companies I still love you. The insurance companies have become very involved in code and standards development. FEMA has always been involved on the seismic side, and they got one of the best debaters I've ever seen in that venue there. And they've promised to bring people to the next Sound Road code hearings for structural to address wind and snow items too. So we're going to see codes and standards become tighter, and it's not just because of public safety. It's now financial risk with the insurance companies, and they're serious. They are dead serious about this. So that's going to be a big deal. I think we're going to. I love the way the product's positioned. So I don't have any concerns that we're going to fall short, but this is going to touch on marketing. This is going to touch on some of our research programs and things like that. We'll have to redirect a little bit. The other aspect to this is we're starting to see more and more state level programs come into play, because a lot of the NGOs have been frustrated with the lack of progress of the federal level. And so they've just diverted their lobbying dollars down to the state level. And so now, instead of tracking one body or N number of people, you're now tracking N times 50, which makes our job a lot less fun. But that's okay. That's what we're here for. And so we're really, particularly on the toxicity side and fire retardants and things like that, going to start seeing more activity at the state legislature level. And we'll have to all be ready for that, because those things, I think the only way to cover that is to go to our members and go to our sister associations, and you take this state, you take that state, because there's just so many different bodies involved to track this. But we're on it, and I think that's something you'll see in the next 18 months for sure.
One of the things I wanted to say regarding what's in our future for the MCM is we have a new program, a revised program for the certified fabricators. And I'll put a shameless plug in, and we're doing a presentation down at the Knowledge Center at noon. But the basics of this whole system is we've changed from just saying a fabricator can be a certified fabricator. Now it's a system fabricators. So we're going in a little bit more meat, and they have to have systems that actually pass certain tests, and we go from there. And it's all based on a four-leg system. We have service, we have experience, we have MCM systems, and we also have financial stability. So we've tried to cover all of those bases and really make it a worthwhile system. And we're getting a lot of good feedback on that. So it's just a matter of time, and we expect to have a good next 12 to 18 months as far as looking for more fabricators to really solidify our position in the marketplace. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're at the end of our hour, so panelists, I'd like to thank you for your comments and the intriguing conversation here today. I'd welcome anybody if I had hoped to open up the questions to the floor for a little bit, but I'm sure everybody will hang out here for a few minutes as they can to if you have any questions. But we thank you for being here and your attendance. Enjoy the rest of the show.